Committee meeting. Today is December 1st. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Martinez.
Here.
Councilmember Koretz.
Here.
Councilmember Krikorian.
Here.
Councilmember Cedillo. Councilmember Farrell.
I'm here.
4 members present. A quorum of the committee is present, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Members, we have a few items on today's agenda. I know today's part of the agenda is going to be a discussion and action on oil drilling items in today's agenda. But before we discuss any of these items, I'd like to take public comment. So if we can go ahead and give 40 minutes of public comment to speak on any of these items here with us today. So why don't we go ahead and take the first speaker.
Caller ending in 3084, press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Madam Chair, may I read the instructions into the record?
Yes, sir.
As indicated on the committee agenda, members of the public who wish to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 161-292-7434 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. Once again, members of the public who wish to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 161-292-7434 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. When it is your time to speak, please indicate which specific agenda item you would like to speak on. Please turn down the volume of the devices on which you are listening to the meeting to avoid any feedback due to the time lag.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney, you want to go ahead and read the instructions as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To members of the public calling in, when it is your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you would like to speak on. You have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 2 minutes total, and 1 minute for general public comment. We will tell you when your time is up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you are not speaking on topic, or if we cannot tell whether you are speaking on an agenda item, you will get 1 brief warning from me or the chair. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic or again stray off topic, the chair will cut you off and you will forfeit the rest of your speaking time, and we will move on to the next speaker. We will take 40 minutes total of public comment. Finally, for members of the public calling in to speak, as soon as you hear someone address you, you are live in the committee meeting. If you are also listening to the committee meeting on your computer, channel 35, or other device, please turn down the volume on those devices immediately. There is a time delay between the live meeting and the broadcast on those devices, and it will cause confusion if you continue to listen on your other devices. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and start with the first caller.
Caller ending in 3084, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 3084, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 0900, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Ray Watson, item number 3.
Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. As a 40-year oil and gas industry veteran, safely and responsibly powering California, I just want to remind the City Council, please, that we don't have a problem with oil and gas in California in terms of the global carbon footprint. We have a demand problem that Californians and Angelenos, as part of Californians, have a huge appetite for oil, 1.5 million barrels per day. We must address demand before we cut off our nose to spite our face by stopping production. We're an energy island. There aren't any magic pipelines that run anywhere else in the United States to California to supply oil. It's going to come on dirty super tankers from despotic regimes like Saudi Arabia if we don't produce it here. So I would just ask that you keep that in mind. Obviously, the economic effects are brutal for stopping an industry that has provided so much of an economic engine to this California economy.
Thank you, Speaker.
But
Thank you. Next speaker.
Caller ending in 0441, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 0441, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, hi. This is Rabia Sen. I'm speaking to items 2 and 3, and I am with Esperanza Community Housing. We're proud members of the Standalay Coalition. We urge you to do the following: enact a 2,500-foot health and human safety buffer and declare wells a non-conforming use, and reject the lies and false choices trumpeted by this oil industry. It distracts from public health and racial justice. They would have us all believe that we must choose between our economic well-being and our health, and this is all just to protect their profits over our lives. Let's reject this false choice, because everyone has a right to health, affordable housing, and access to good, well-paying jobs. And the fact is that if you invest in a true just recovery and just transition to a healthy green economy, this will benefit workers, community members, public health, and the environment. To say that we need to continue the extraction here because otherwise we'll be extracting from other countries that violate human rights is basically giving us a false choice, saying, let us keep violating the human rights of our own people here. The fact is, everyone has a right to health and human rights and to environmental justice. This is a matter of racial justice. And especially during this pandemic, this issue of racial justice has been laid bare for all to see. BIPOC communities have borne the brunt of the health impact, and we know that breathing in toxic air from oil wells and other sources is a multiplier for the impacts of COVID. We need your leadership, so please, please, invest in a just recovery from COVID and a just transition to a clean energy economy that benefits frontline communities and workers. You can take that important step today by approving a motion to draft a 2,500-foot human health and safety buffer ordinance and uplifting public health. Thank you so much. Bye.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 2462, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Angela Gibson, speaking to item number 3.
Go ahead.
I'm here today thank you. Here today representing Greater LA African American Chamber of Commerce, and we recognize the sensitivity of managing the environment and the residents and the business community. However, now is not the time to negatively impact another business industry. We urge you to reconsider the option before you. Our local economy will not be able to recover if you move forward with this process. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 0492, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Ethan Sensei from Food and Water Action. I'd like to talk on item number 3.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. As a representative of Food and Water Action, I stand in strong support of environmental justice communities and urging the committee to request that the planning department draft an ordinance for 2,500 feet human health and safety buffer zones. Oil drilling is a stain on the city's record of environmental justice. I know the council president just took a strong stance on that in her community with the motion on closing Valley Generating Station. That was amazing. And that motion does what our city has so often failed to do, which is move beyond the rhetoric of environmental justice and towards the actual act of being accountable to our communities. We need to be breaking away from the zero-sum analysis, saying that one community needs to suffer in order to power the rest of the city, of saying that protecting the health of our communities means leaving others out to dry. Those are lies, plain and simple. We've seen oil and gas companies starting to go bankrupt during COVID-19, and abandon their responsibility to the public and their workers. We can avoid that. We've seen legislators at the counties start creating real just transition plans that would put workers to work, decommission these sites.
Thank you.
But to
Caller ending in 9743, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 9743, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, my name is Tommy Falvay, and I'd like to speak on items 2 and 3.
Go ahead, you have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Tommy Falvay. I represent IBEW, Electrical Workers Local Union 11 in Los Angeles. And on behalf of many of my friends and coworkers who could not be here to speak in front of you today, sustainable economies will not be formed tomorrow. So why should we act like they will if we make this decision? For now, it is best to make decisions that support working people in Los Angeles, the policies that ban them. And I also wanted to speak on the setback when it comes to the 2,500-foot setback, that we're against the setback. We like to see, more decisions and conversations when it comes to this. So thank you and have a good day.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 9348, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 9348, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Heather Curtis, item 2.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Heather Curtis. I am speaking on item 2 on behalf of Heal the Bay, an environmental nonprofit organization based in Santa Monica. Heal the Bay strongly supports a 2,500-foot setback requirement for oil and gas infrastructure to protect human health. Los Angeles contains the largest urban oil field in the nation, with nearly 500,000 residents living in close proximity to oil and gas infrastructure. These communities disproportionately bear the burden of health impacts, including respiratory illness, headaches, birth defects, and high cancer risk. 92% of people living near oil and gas in California are people of color. This is a symptom of systemic racism, and it is time our community leaders take action to dismantle oppression and racism. We urge Chair Martinez and the committee to move that the Planning Department and City Attorney draft an ordinance for a 2,500-foot human health and safety buffer, declare wells a non-conforming land use, and publicly release a copy or summary of the City Attorney's report. Thank you so much for your time.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 7006, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items.
All items, general public comment.
Okay, you have 2 minutes for the items and 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
Very good. Now we get to number 1. We're replacing on the Forest Committee the most important item ever. Thank you, David Rowe, for getting rid of that stinky cut strong off of that panel. I'm so tired of her killing our trees. Environmental cunt, no more. Now we get to the oil. Oil is filthy. Disgusting drilling. Ew. All over the place. You step on the oil, you breathe the fumes. And then you become ugly like Herb Wesson, a little tiny chain-smoking nigger like that. He loves oil wells. Get rid of all the drilling, all the oil wells. Emancipate those who are breathing chemicals like I am right now. I don't care if oil is expensive. I'll pay $5, $6, $7 a gallon like I used to do in London. We call it per liter. But please,
Speaker, can you get back on the items?
Yes, Mommy, I'm sorry. I was just breathing the carbon monoxide from the oil well next to my house. Yes, anyway, get rid of all the oil companies out of LA. I want to buy my fuel from Turkey, like Paul Krikorian. I want to buy gas from Azerbaijan and buy those pretty people, the Saudis. I don't want these oil companies anymore. And now, for my general comment, can I have my 1 minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Well, as you know, David Rue is leaving. Thank you for your service, David Rue, for everything you've done for us. She's being replaced by a fucking cut, Cassie Ramen, Dom Ramen. And finally, we give tribute to Herb Weston, who lost worse than Mitchell Englander, 60% to only 39.1. The little short dick, chain smoking, yellow fingered loser bitch. Bye-bye, Herb. Take that $200,000 gift Nuri gave you so you could steal it for bonuses, but you're out on your ass. And finally, and most importantly, give us a deal for governor. Fuck the mayor. We need Gibson deal right now to take over California and steal Corona money and buy those goddamn apartment buildings. Good job,
Speaker.
Gil.
Caller ending in 6605, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 6605, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Caller ending in 8165, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 8165, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Good afternoon. My name is Jordan Cecatelli, and I'd like to speak on item 2.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of many of my friends and coworkers who could not be here. All of us have worked hard to bring LA the energy it needs, and now our jobs and our lives are at risk. I ask everyone in favor, if they really think now is the time to make this decision. I don't think this should be the priority right now. I hope the council members agree with me. Thank you very much for your time.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 9398, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 9398, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Shimari Davis. I'm from IBW Local 11, Los Angeles, and I'd like to speak on item 3.
Go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. This is not the time to make the lives of essential workers harder. We're already dealing with COVID, but regulating this industry anymore than it already is will push us out of the job. It's very important that we're able to sustain and take care of our families. And our regulations for California are already incredibly strict, and we want to make sure that our families are safe as well, because we live and breathe here as well. So please remember the common everyday people when you are deciding. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 8742, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
So Sarah Wiltfong in item 3.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Wiltfong, and I'm with the Los Angeles County Business Federation, also known as BizFed. We're an alliance of over 200 business organizations who represent over 400,000 employers in Los Angeles County. We understand the committee will be reviewing a report on implementing an oil well setback in this city. In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, it has become apparent that now is not the time to be considering a setback. Businesses and residents are struggling to survive, and the city's sole focus should be on providing resources to help them stay afloat and to find solutions that will help bolster the economy when this pandemic lifts. As such, we find it inappropriate the city would even consider the potential to place even more people out of work when this is over. COVID-19 has also highlighted the need for Los Angeles to rely on more local resources, and imposing a new setback would increase our already heavy dependence on foreign oil at exactly the wrong time. We believe any consideration of a setback would further hurt the economy and the communities our economy sustains. We hope that the LA City Council will reconsider any attempts to move forward with a setback. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 9686, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Parks, and I'd like to address agenda items 2, 3, and general public comment.
You have 2 minutes for both items and 1 minute for general public comment.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I serve as the president of Redeemer Community Partnership in South Los Angeles. As you've heard, the oil industry likes to say that they are the most regulated in the world. The truth is that they have worked for decades to fragment the regulatory environment. They've made sure also that regulatory agencies are so underfunded that they lack the resources to regulate and collaborate. The result has harmed the health and safety of residents. In our community, homes next to drill sites have been sprayed with oil. Closed windows cannot keep diesel exhaust and petroleum fumes out of our children's bedrooms. Ambient fumes from acid jobs have killed plants around the drill sites. Weekly, we watch tanker trucks filled with toxic chemicals and acid arrive in our community. They have chilling warning labels, like the one for Surfitron DQ86, which reads, "Danger, harmful if inhaled, damages fertility and the unborn child." Methane is explosive at 50,000 parts per million. AQ&D inspectors coming to our neighborhood have documented leaks at the drill site as high as 1.6 million parts per million. And when they documented that leak, they didn't issue a violation. The oil company that drills in our neighborhood has even hit a radioactive source in the course of drilling. Oil and gas extraction is fundamentally incompatible with residential neighborhoods. Therefore, I urge you to, 1, declare oil and gas a non-conforming land use in the city of Los Angeles. 2, begin amortization studies to expedite the closure of the neighborhood drill sites. And 3, make sure that oil companies pay to clean up their mess and provide for a just transition for workers. Thank you very much.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 9831, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 9831, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 7839, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 7839, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 5337, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, my name is Mike Costigan. I'd like to speak on item 2.
Okay, you have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mike Costigan. I'm with IBEW Local 11, the electrical workers. We, the workers in the oil and gas industry, know that our industry is in the crosshairs, but everyone uses the energy we produce. That said, our energy is regulated to strict environmental standards. We are producing energy locally and safely. The policies potentially before you would cause damage to the good and strong industry. Please consider working families when you review this report. Thank you and have a great day.
Caller ending in 8629, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Damon Nagami, item number 2.
You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. I'm a senior attorney with the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. We agree with others' comments and urge, 1, that the city attorney's report, or at least a summary, be publicly released, and 2, that the committee move to draft an ordinance for a 2,500-foot setback and declare oil wells a non-conforming land use. Setback ordinance is not only the most effective approach to addressing these health impacts, but it is also legally sound and defensible. We've done considerable legal research and are confident that such an ordinance would not result in a regulatory taking of property without just compensation, nor would it impermissibly infringe on an operator's vested rights. Finally, in any cost-benefit analysis, please be sure to factor in the considerable savings from improved health outcomes, such as fewer trips to the ER and the like. Now actually is the time to act because residents are suffering now, as we've heard. Please be bold, and in the face of this urgent threat, recommend aggressive actions that will protect the health of our communities. Thank you.
Caller ending in 2780, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Lisa Hart, items 2 and 3.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. We still have 62 member neighborhood councils and we still support the Stand LA effort. It makes me very sad that this discussion has been framed by some as to be about jobs. I understand that we're talking about well-paying jobs and that stalling the inevitable might serve some people's immediate interests. But I wonder and I ask, does it serve your children's interests? Does it serve your community's interests? It looks to me like labor unions are being co-opted by the oil and gas industry. We are building a new economy because we have to, because the old one isn't serving us. And we would much rather work with you than against you. Thank you.
Caller ending in 0603, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, my name is Wendy Miranda, and I'd like to speak on items 2 and 3.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Wendy, and I'm a resident of Wilmington, where most of these oil drilling sites are. For years, my community has had to deal with breathing toxic pollutants from these oil drilling sites that have caused so many of us, including myself and my family, to have asthma and other health issues. Everyone should have the right to breathe clean air. Our communities shouldn't have to wait this long for a safety buffer that can protect our health and shouldn't have to sacrifice their health to the oil and gas industry. Contrary to what others have been saying with this COVID-19 pandemic, now should be the time to act, as we know that breathing in these toxic pollutants can devastate COVID-19 mortality rates even more. We urge that the committee should move the planning department and the city attorney draft an ordinance for a 2,500-foot human health and safety buffer and declare wells a non-conforming land use. We need leadership from this committee and the whole city council to lead on a just transition to a clean energy economy that benefits frontline communities and workers and prioritizes our health. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 9329, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Jim Kennedy. I'm the Executive Director of the Healthy Air Alliance. I would like to speak on items 2 and 3.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. My comments today are in full support of the 2,500-foot setback for oil and gas extraction production as part of the Los Angeles City's Just Transition campaign. Just means justice. justice and equity for human health, and dignity for all Angelenos. As much as we respect the Los Angeles City Council, we cannot expect this body to solve all our problems, but we demand the City Council continuously shine a light on human health crises and inequities coming from petroleum production. And we can work with the City Council on blazing a path forward to a sustainable city and 100% renewable energy. Please change the zoning, and we can work together on execution of the phasing out of non-compliant oil and gas wells. By the City Council taking this step, you will be creating shovel-ready projects eligible for federal funding and other grants if they're necessary. And our shovels will be ready to bury fossil fuels back down in the ground. We are learning more and more each day the costly medical effects of petroleum toxins in our air. The Healthy Air Alliance works to maximize each day the ways we can make air more healthy, from decreasing the carbon intensity of our transportation fuels under low carbon fuel standards to doing everything possible to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. We look forward to your continued leadership that takes us further towards these goals. We cannot wait and allow another generation to be exposed. Thank you so much.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 80850, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 0850, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
From Venice, and I'd like to speak on items 2 and 3.
You have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, and general public comment. Sorry.
Okay, 2 minutes, and then 1 minute for your general public comment.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I want to reframe everything that has been said and say something different and uplift everyone who's a proponent of the 2,500-foot setback. And I want to call upon your integrity. I want to call upon your familiar sense of duty to your own family, because the families living next to these huge derricks and oil wells are suffering, and anyone coming to speak against this 2,500-foot setback and proponents of jobs is concerning, that they're so filled with fear, and we need to undo that fear and accommodate their training for new jobs, and we need to treat these families as if they are our own, and that these children that are growing up in these conditions with the bad quality of air and the exposure to these chemicals are autoimmune deficient. They're compromised, and I don't know of anyone in this community that is not going to suffer COVID and survive it without us doing something about it. So this is the right time to take a look and to do something for our families and in the communities, Wilmington, Carson, Torrance, San Pedro, everywhere these oil wells are. And to my general public comment, I'm going to say that, it's really difficult that the suspension of the Brown Act causes us to have 30 minutes of general public comment, and that's all you offer. Once we speak, we're kicked off the meeting, and it's difficult to get back into the meeting, and I don't want to believe that's intentional. And I usually would head to City Hall prior to COVID and speak before you twice a week, once a week on the minimum. And now that this is our new normal and we're trying to figure out a healthy future for all of us, we really need to be better at this, and you need to offer these legalese documents and these reports and reviews with the families that these are affecting. I'm talking about police, housing, environment, everything that affects our health and our safety, because none of you on City Council live next to these. You'll never be pulled over and shot in the back. You'll never have fear in your life the way that the rest of the BIPOC families do.
Thank you.
So that.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 5779, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
I'm Patricia McPherson, Grassroots Coalition. I'd like to speak on public comment and items 2 and 3, please.
You have 2 minutes for your 2 items and 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
All right, I'll start with public comment. I would like to remind everyone that there was a compliance review request regarding SoCal Gas Playa del Rey underground gas storage facilities, that the city has done a report that is now out per CF 19-112. They've responded in a report essentially stating that it is not the responsibility of the City of LA to enforce its own conditional use permit, and that it is the work of the California Public Utilities Commission and CalGEM to enforce the safety of these underground gas storage facilities. And I remind the city planning that there are also 3 compliance review requests, one by Grassroots Coalition and the Airport Marina Group Sierra Club and Protect Playa Now, that submitted data and information from the city planning reports that specifically shows that the city of LA does have authority regarding natural resources, and that is all part of their conditional use permit, which is under their own city planning documents. Any use found to be objectionable or incompatible with the character of the city and its environs due to noise, dust, odors, and other undesirable characteristics may be prohibited. This hearing will be coming up, hopefully at the first of the year, and I ask that people ask for this hearing to occur. I remind the city that it is these conditional use permits and these ordinances that are being requested.
Can you move on to your last 2 items?
Go into the last
items
2 at this point. Yes,
2
that's
and 3,
fine.
because your time is running out.
Sure. These are covenants that the city makes with the public. The city receives revenue on all of the residences. The zoning creates residential use, and the city makes the money off of that residential use. It is no secret that homes and people are being harmed by these toxic oil wells that are outgassing. The city is very familiar, the city attorney is very familiar with the Belmont Learning Center complex and all of these other areas that we have had tremendous outgassings and people getting sick on a daily basis because of off-gassing from all of these toxic chemicals. Grassroots Coalition stands with Stand LA, Food and Water Watch, NRDC, the South LA Group, and all of the others that have spoken out on behalf of the 2,500-foot setback and the other issues having to do with the zoning. And again, these are issues that the city knows that it is making money from residential use. Therefore, the city has the culpability to protect its public. If the city cannot protect...
I just want to remind the members of the public, we have hundreds of folks trying to speak at today's meeting, so our intent is not to cut you off, but when your time is up, we've got to move on to the next speaker. We're trying to get to as many speakers as possible. So, next caller.
Caller ending in 0073, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Martalina Arguello with Physicians for Social Responsibility. I'd like to speak to items 2 and 3 in general comment.
Okay, you have 2 minutes for your items and 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Council President Martinez. We are very hopeful that today you will leave your mark by moving forward the draft of a 2,500-foot health and safety buffer. We ask the committee not to be gaslit by the oil industry. The oil industry and oil companies are notorious for using scare tactics, false claims of safety, and threats of lawsuits to bully both communities and governments. And we know that they have captured many of our agencies. And so to say that this is a very regulated industry is not to say much. To say that we need to pull out oil out of Los Angeles, where we violate the human rights of the thousands of people that live near oil wells, but yet invoke the human rights of people in other countries, is the height of hypocrisy. And the city attorney has clearly said that we are prepared to defend a setback ordinance, and this council must show the will to stand up to the oil industry, but really face the reality. We must transition, and we must transition fairly. What you're doing today, we hope will consider the process of amortization, so we can do this. And it isn't like jobs are going to be gone tomorrow. We will have a just transition. We will fight next to our brothers and sisters in labor to defend their rights to have access to economic opportunities, just like many of our Black and Brown and Indigenous communities who currently live next to these fields. We need to fight for racial justice at the same time that we fight for environmental justice, at the same time that we begin to reduce the cumulative impacts of pollution that is making our communities more vulnerable to climate and clearly more vulnerable to the pandemic of COVID. We have to move beyond the types of risk assessment tools that discount experiences of communities and really root our policies and moving forward with the 2,500-foot setback that actually protects health and sets the tone for what the city of the future will look like. And what countries and what other people want from us is not the exportation of our oil, but the exportation of our new technologies that will make energy efficiency and energy available that is renewable and safe and clean, so no one is having to choose between their work or their health. We need a just transition. The new presidential administration is eager to tackle climate change, and we have an opportunity here in Los Angeles to figure out what a city built on oil will look like in the future as we run out of oil and we face the reality of climate change. Fossil fuel workers and thousands of other workers need and deserve family-sustaining, dignified union jobs, and we will fight next to them as we scale back this dangerous practice that happens dangerously close to where people live, for which we have a safe alternative. It is time for the city to lead Los Angeles into the future. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 3222, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 3222, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 5685, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is Sam Nieto, and I would like to speak on item number 3. Good afternoon,
good afternoon. You have 1 minute. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Sam Nieto. As a resident of the city, I have to ask myself why so many of my fellow citizens would push for something that will cause great economic damage at a time like this. This industry is safe and well regulated. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 1145, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your
Hello,
name
my
and the
name is
items you'd
Dan
like to
Pegel.
speak on.
I'm a resident. I'd like to say that oil and gas production poses risks to nearby city residents, and there are cleaner ways to power our city. Because phasing out oil production will take years, now is the time to start. There's no reason to wait. And I think it's also worth noting that oil and babies don't mix. Thank you.
Caller ending in 6987, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name
Hi
and the
there.
items you'd like to speak on.
I would like to click on agenda item number 2, 3, and public comment.
Okay, you have 2 minutes for your items and 1 minute for general public comment. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start with public comment first. Hi there. My name is Jocelyn Mogal. I am the Wilmington Youth Intern Organizer at Communities for a Better Environment in Wilmington, California. My main public comment is that we should all stop being gaslighted by the oil industry on implementing a 2,500-foot health and safety buffer, mainly because I live on a predominantly dense dense population of oil wells in Wilmington, California, specifically where Warren EMP, but also a few oil wells that are nearby a public high school, a middle school, and several churches. So that's kind of like that's pretty much just been my environment for the last 22 years. But it's also on public comment number 2, I would like to ask that we should implement a 2,500-foot health and safety buffer, and that no one shouldn't be afraid of the oil industry and its threats. No one shouldn't be afraid of that. And the fact that this is a perfect opportunity because of COVID-19 and because of the disproportionate realities of COVID-19 affecting Black and Latino communities, more specifically the Wilmington community as well in District 15. We don't deserve to breathe toxic air from oil wells. We don't deserve to have our children having asthma. I don't deserve having asthma since I was 5. I don't deserve having to wake up with nosebleeds. No one doesn't deserve having to suffer the consequences on what oil drilling on residence sites near homes, high schools, churches, parking, shopping centers, but as well as public parks. No one doesn't deserve that. With recent recent current movements, we ask to have a health and safety buffer of 2,500 feet, so that way we can all breathe clean air and we can all have clean environmentally friendly jobs in the future. We can't depend on the oil industry any longer. Thank you.
Members, that was the last speaker on today's agenda, so we can go ahead and close public comment. So let's go ahead and take up item number 1, and this is the appointment to the Community Forest Advisory Committee. Colleagues, the mayor has made an appointment to this advisory committee. I believe that he's on. Can we let him into our meeting? Mr. Paraduni?
Hi, it's
I'm sorry, this is Ms. Paraduni. I misunderstood. Ms. Paraduni, welcome to our meeting. I want to just give you an opportunity to say a few words about your appointment, if you want to share anything with this committee, and if committee members have any questions.
Of course. My name is Catherine Pakarduni. I am a native plant horticulturist. I've worked in and around Los Angeles for a number of years at the Theodore Payne Foundation, and then here in Griffith Park with nonprofit Grown in LA, and I do a number of native plant oriented habitat enhancement projects and things throughout Griffith Park here, and I'm looking forward to participating in a more civic way with regards to our urban forest.
Well, thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Of Ms. Pakarduni, do we have any questions for her?
No, Madam Chair, but I'd be delighted to move Ms. Pakarduni's nomination.
Okay, I second that. So if there are no other objections, this committee will recommend to full council the approval of your appointment. Thank you very much for serving.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item number 4. This is the approval of the Arroyo Seco Alley River Diversion project. Members, this item is before us for approval of a runoff diversion project in association with MND. I'd like the clerk to go ahead and read this item into the record.
Yes, Madam Chair. Board of Public Works report relative to the approval of the Los Angeles River and Arroyo Seco low-flow diversions project and adoption of the initial study, mitigated negative declaration, and mitigation monitoring program for the project in accordance with the California Environmental Quality Act.
Okay, thank you. Members, is there a motion to go ahead and approve this item?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. Moved in second by Mr. Koretz. I'm sorry, moved by Mr. Cedillo and second by Mr. Koretz. That item is approved. Let's go ahead and take up items number 2 and 3 together. Mr. Clerk, can you go ahead and read those 2 items into the record?
Yes, Madam Chair. Item number 2 is the City Attorney's confidential reports relative to the legal review of the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration and Safety's recommendations in its report entitled Feasibility of Amending Current City Land Use Codes in Connection with Health Impacts and Oil and Gas Wells and Drill Sites.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. This brings us to the oil discussion this afternoon. As we shared in our last meeting, there is a confidential report provided by our city attorney with additional information and legal consideration. I believe the report has, most of you have been briefed individually by the city attorney's office. As I mentioned then, we need to take steps forward on this important issue affecting some of our most vulnerable neighborhoods in our city. We have before us a very lengthy report submitted by the Petroleum Administrator in 2019 and a legal analysis of that report conducted by our city attorney. The report includes a set of recommendations for this council to consider, but before we proceed, I'd like to ask Ms. Erica Blyther, our Environmental Affairs Officer from the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration, to be able to come into our meeting in case anyone has any questions of her. Can you hear me, Ms. Blyther?
Yes, good afternoon. I hear you.
Good afternoon. There you are. Why don't you go ahead? Do you have any additional comments you'd like to provide on these two issues before we ask members if they have any questions?
I just had a brief overview of the report itself and just an update on the landscape of setbacks that have occurred since 2019. I'm not sure if you want a brief overview or just the landscape of what's occurred since then.
Why don't you just go ahead and give us a brief, go ahead.
Sure.
Give us a brief overview on what's occurred ever since then.
Okay. What's occurred since then? Certainly.
Yes.
So in the 17 months since the July 2019 report, there have been a few oil and gas health studies that have been published, and there have been efforts by local jurisdictions on setbacks. At the state level, the California Geologic Energy Management Division is following a public health rulemaking for communities near oil and gas production operations. The pre-regulatory process began in 2020, and CalGEM was able to complete 4 of their 10 in-person workshops prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. And since then, they held 3 online virtual workshops as replacements. New modified rules are anticipated later this year. There's also Assembly Bill 345, which establishes an environmental justice program within the Natural Resources Agency. It requires on or before July 1st, 2020, the Department of Conservation to adopt regulations to protect public health and safety near oil and gas extraction facilities that include a minimum setback distance between oil and gas activities and sensitive receptors such as schools, childcare facilities, playgrounds, residences, hospitals, and health clinics. In September 2020, the governor's executive order N7920 on September 23rd mentioned several issues related to fossil fuels. Item 1 received the most attention. It was about 100% of in-state sales of new passenger cars and trucks to be zero emission by 2035. However, there were also items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And 8 related to repurposing and transitioning upstream, which is also known as production, and downstream, which is refining oil production facilities. Again, it's a just transition order, and the idea is to have, while supporting community participation, label standards, and protection of public health, safety, and the environment. And the agencies are to report by July 15th of 2021. Item 10 mentioned that by July 15th of 2021, to manage and expedite the reasonable closure and remediation of formal oil extraction sites as the state transitions to carbon neutral. Item 11 was that CalGEM and other state regulatory agencies shall strictly enforce bonding requirements and other regulations to ensure oil extraction operators are responsible for the proper closure and remediation of their sites. And 12 is that CalGEM shall propose a significantly stringent science-based health and safety draft rule that protects communities and workers from the impacts of oil extraction activities by December 31st of 2020. So that's going to happen in the next 30 days. At the local level in LA County, a motion was made by Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas entitled Facilitating the Development of a Just Transition Away from Fossil Fuel Strategy. So the strategy was to be presented to the Board of Supervisors within 45 days. There was an extension to that, and so now that report is expected in March of 2021. They are convening the task force in early December, I believe this week, in fact, for initial meeting and hope to include relevant agencies. In Culver City, at its meeting in October 26 of 2020, the Culver City Council adopted a resolution declaring its intent to evaluate the establishment of an appropriate 5-year phase-out period for the amortization of non-conforming oil and gas uses within Culver City's portion of the Inglewood oil field. So there has been some activity by several local jurisdictions and the state level looking at setbacks and just transition.
Ms. Blyther, does that conclude your?
That's all I have to say about the local efforts. Yes.
All right, thank you. We also have been joined by Mr. Michelson from the City Attorney's Office. I thought I saw him earlier in our meeting. Just want to make sure he's on in the meeting in case anyone has any questions. So if that concludes your remarks, Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Michelson, do you want anything else to share with us?
And with me here today is Jennifer Token, and we're here and available to answer questions that you all may have to the best of our abilities.
Okay, colleagues, I have some recommendations for this committee to consider, but before I do that, I'd like to ask if you have any questions. Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you very much, Madam President and Madam Chair in this context, excuse me. First of all, since we have our representatives of the City Attorney's Office here and a number of people have talked about the City Attorney's advice, I would just like to reiterate that I think it would be ill-advised for us to engage in a legal discussion right now with the City Attorney in open session. But I do want to note that today, my office got a call from a representative of the oil and gas industry that that person, in fact, did assure us that they would be suing the city. So we now have an active threat of litigation. And so I would suggest that if there is any need to discuss these issues with the city attorney, we now have a complete ability to go into closed session as need be. So if members would like to talk to the city attorney in closed session, we now have every entitlement to do so given that real threat of potential litigation, in my view. City attorney can tell me otherwise if that's not the case.
I would only, this is Dave Michelson again, thank you, Councilmember Krikorian. I would only add to that if the council wanted to discuss the legal issues in closed session, yes, the council can do so based on what is now a threat of litigation against the city, but it would have to be agendized on a subsequent agenda. It could not be done today because the Brown Act was changed a couple of years ago and unfortunately, frankly, ties our hands in an existing meeting.
Right. I'm confident this will be an ongoing discussion. So for future meetings, we can now schedule it as a closed session item as well.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I wanted to just, if I can, take a minute to talk about some of my thought process on this, because I've been digging deeply into this issue over the course of a very long time. And I think we all probably want to be on board with the idea of separating oil and gas production from human beings who are living their lives in neighborhoods. So one of the issues that I've had to work through is, well, there's two issues. One is, what does that do to our economy and jobs, especially in a time right now when we desperately need economic revitalization? And two, what potential liability might that expose the city to at a time when we have a budget that cannot bear a single penny of expense or liability because we are in such terrible, catastrophic revenue situation because of COVID-19. So I want to just talk about those two issues for just a minute if I could. And, I might have a couple questions that staff can chime in on. But some of the representatives of the oil industry that came to testify even today said that it made clear that they were concerned about loss of jobs and economic impact. And given the fact that there will be a transition period of time, no matter what we do, it appears to me, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that certainly in the short term and more likely in the long term, there will be zero economic effect there will be not a single job lost, because even if we were to declare today that oil and gas extraction is a non-conforming use, so long as there's an amortization period and that continues on, no one needs to be laid off at all until such time as that amortization period is over. Is that true? Am I understanding that correctly? Is there anybody?
Well, this is Dave Michelson, city attorney. I'm not sure we're the folks to respond
Well, no,
to
you're
that,
probably not the right person.
but I do think it's perfectly logical what you said, so I'll add that in.
Okay, so let me just add to that then this issue of transition, because another representative of the oil and gas industry who came to speak today said, well, the real problem is that California just uses too much oil. There's too much of a demand problem, and Los Angeles is just car addicted, and we just gotta, continue to meet the demand of the public. Well, that's nonsense for any number of reasons. First of all, the just transition away from oil production in Los Angeles has been going on for a long time already. This is a city that has a long history with the oil and gas industry. The oil and gas industry helped build this city in the early 20th century. But in the 70s, the LA Basin was producing almost 100 million barrels of oil. And by the 80s, that number had dropped off to 45 to 50 million barrels of oil. Now, over the last decade, it's gone down from 15 to 11 million barrels of oil. So the production from Los Angeles Basin has dropped dramatically on the natural, without any intervention on our part at all. It's steeply declined. And then the idea that if we were to reduce or phase out the production of oil in Los Angeles, that would somehow mean that California oil refineries would need to dramatically increase their consumption of foreign oil is also rubbish. First of all, that has also been happening over the last several decades. In 1985, California refineries used 400 million barrels of California oil. That was about 60%, a little over 60% of what they used to refine. In 2019, that number had dropped from 400 million to about 180 million. And the percentage had gone down to about 30%. So that move towards foreign oil and away from California oil has been going on for decades now, and will likely continue regardless of what we do. So those notions are canards, and we should ignore them. Now, when it comes to the budget and the potential for liability, I would just point out again that we've been pretty clearly told in public settings that so long as there is an appropriate time for amortized return on investment on the part of the property owners, that there should be no budgetary impact or potential for having to reimburse for a taking, if this were found to be a taking. And I'm satisfied that is the case. I have become satisfied that we would not be exposed to a budgetary impact. And so I would be prepared to move forward today with an instruction to the city attorney to not just create a buffer zone, but to make oil and gas extraction in the city of Los Angeles, in all zones, a non-conforming use. And then to move forward with the consultant to advise us on appropriate data that we can base an amortization decision on, and solicit other recommendations from that consultant with regard to making a just transition and reducing the economic impact to jobs, as well as to the budget of the city of Los Angeles. So, Madam Chair, I just wanted to explain my thinking on this, and I hope that that's consistent with your thinking and what you would want to propose, but I'm happy to discuss what other members think would be the appropriate way forward. But if we have an amortization period, it seems to me we should start the clock ticking on that amortization period earlier rather than later.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. And let me get to Mr. Koretz, and then I'm happy to share my thought process as well. And I can also read some of the recommendations I'm proposing. We can all weigh in on that. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Krikorian, for somewhat psychic similarity to some of the things I wanted to suggest as well. I think we're definitely in the same wavelength. First, I want to say that not necessarily the absolute worst operators in the city, but several of the active drill sites in CD5 have caused a significant amount of fear and concern, and justifiably so, among my constituents. We've been working through a zoning administrator hearing process to work to shut down the problematic and non-compliant West Pico drill site, where I grew up, ironically, within 300 feet of the oil drilling site there. And we're several months into waiting for the determination of that hearing to be released. The constituents surrounding the drill site have been up in arms about how long it's taking and how long our citywide annual inspection process is taking to be approved, and I share their impatience. The parents at the Gindi Maimonides Academy have let me know they're quite concerned about the San Vicente drill site, which is tucked away behind the Beverly Center, right across the street from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, and the fact that we typically just rubber stamp renewals of sites. When I was told that in 2013, partly because we didn't have the technical expertise within the city, led to my pushing hard to get an expert that we have in a department that we have today as our oil and gas administrator and advisors. Last but not least, the Rancho Park drill site had unpermitted equipment on site, including a large gas burner that, in my opinion, has no place whatsoever in a neighborhood or near 3 schools. Not long after we addressed the unpermitted equipment, there was an equipment failure of SoCal Gas's mercaptan odorant equipment at the site, which panicked residents surrounding the Rancho Park drill site. They didn't know whether it was safer to stay in their homes or if they should leave immediately. And SoCal Gas was actively misleading us about the source of the leak. So we were told it was multiple different locations miles away. The noxious fumes could be smelled up to 4 miles away in Playa Vista, according to emails and calls received by my office at the time. People reported that they were sickened by the smell, could smell it for days in their homes, on their cars, on their drapes and furniture. And that's why, one of the reasons why I believe industrial oil production has absolutely no place in a neighborhood. People's homes should be safe, not invaded by industrial smells caused by failed equipment and an irresponsible SoCal Gas utility. As far as I can tell, none of these folks understood that oil and gas operations were happening nearby when they bought their homes, when they enrolled their children in schools. There was no notification in place so that people could make informed decisions about their proximity to toxic chemicals involved in this production. And I feel that's not fair and not right. And I understand the concern about loss of jobs when oil drilling operations are shut down in the midst of this current crisis. And I'm fully committed to creating a plan for transitioning these workers. I do have the same understanding that Mr. Krikorian is. if the council voted tomorrow to declare these drill sites non-conforming land uses and to declare oil drilling non-conforming, I don't believe that any of these drilling operations would be ordered to shut down and lay off their workers the next day or in the next year, but it wouldn't be until the amortization period was done. And whether it winds up being 5 years like Culver City or 20 years, which I believe is in the current city code, but presumably we would have someone assess that and have a more accurate time. Certainly 5 years or more should be enough time to transition workers to other types of work, hopefully that uses similar of their skills. So in addition, if we amortize, not amortize, if we take the action that Mr. Krikorian had proposed, I think that would also prevent us from digging ourselves in a deeper hole by permitting new oil drilling activities, which currently I believe could still happen. And then we would have many years to amortize them because they just have gone in. So I think that would be a logical step for us to consider among the others that we're looking at taking today.
Any other questions, members? Okay, members, 3 years ago, the council initiated this discussion on how we're going to be able to address the land use codes and oil production in the city. And since then, we've had a number of questions about our authority to be able to do this and what the liability that we should consider if we wanted to move in this direction. And as painfully slow as the process has been, and I know a lot of people have certainly raised concerns about our slow process, but I now know that some of the critical information and some of the answers related to those questions are now available to us. And so I just also want to thank Mr. Krikorian. I believe last time we met in this committee, you made some very strong statements about being mindful not to subsidize oil companies with public money. And I always appreciate your thoughtfulness, and you were spot on. And I also know that at the same time, we have advocates and community groups asking for help in addressing the impacts that are affecting their communities. I know the feeling of living in a neighborhood with incompatible land uses, and I know the impacts and the frustration that it has in these neighborhoods. So I know we're all committed to trying to help as many of our communities as possible, but I also know we need to do it right. So through all the discussion, the reports, and the advocacy efforts, the one thing that stood out loud and clear from everybody is that the amortization studies are a critical component on this policy. And that is where I believe our next steps should be. The Petroleum Administrator's report has a series of recommendations addressing policies and our ordinances and other recommendations to address oil drilling in residential neighborhoods. But colleagues, I know that you know that we're facing a $600 million shortfall this year, and probably a worse budget situation the following year. And in any budget crisis, the simple thing to do is to delay a discussion. But we can't use a budget challenge as an excuse to avoid moving forward here today. So instead, I want us to be able to proceed with being able to conduct an amortization study and be able to develop departmental challenges to address our existing oil activities. I also think that we should take the next steps to really understand what the costs are going to be and understand the staffing needs that we're going to have to address if we want to come up with an ordinance in the future. In addition, we need to, if we want to assume responsibility from the county, if that's the best way to be responsive to these neighborhoods, then we also need to understand what those costs entail. And so I'd like to read the recommendations that I hope this committee can consider and approve as a way to move forward on this issue. So, Mr. City Clerk, I'm going to go ahead and read my instructions, and happy to get feedback from folks. Mr. Kokorin, I see your hand is up, so can I go ahead and read the instructions, and then you can weigh in? Okay, thank you. So, number one, I'd like to instruct the Planning Department to report on the necessary budget and staff needs to further address oil wells in urban residential neighborhoods in the city, including A, hiring an expert to conduct an amortization study of drill sites in residential neighborhoods of the city to determine a legal justification amortization period for the establishment of health and safety buffers for existing wells, including the development of parameters for this study. B, developing changes to the zoning code upon completion of the amortization study to codify restrictions, processes, and requirements with respect to drill sites in residential neighborhoods, particularly in disadvantaged neighborhoods. 2, instruct the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration to report on the types of health assessments available and on the costs necessary to conduct a health assessment at oil and gas drill sites in residential neighborhoods in the city of Los Angeles. 3, instruct the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration to participate in the California Air Resource Board SNAP program and studies to utilize the findings to develop air monitoring and community notification programs for drill sites in these residential neighborhoods in the city. 4, instruct LAFD to report on the necessary budget and staff needs if designated with health officer authority and or to transfer the hazardous waste generator program to LAFD from the county. And 5, adopt recommendations 6 and 10 of the Office of Petroleum and Natural Gas Administration report dated July 29th, 2019.
Second.
Mr. Kokorian?
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to second all that. Mr. Kretz, I'm happy to join Mr. Kretz in doing so. The one thing, and I think they're all spot-on recommendations. The one thing I would also ask and would move I would move is if we could request in the interim, as all that other stuff is moving forward in the interim, if we could ask the city attorney to begin drafting an ordinance to prohibit oil and gas extraction and make extraction activities a non-conforming use in all zones, so that we have the ordinance in process to come back to this committee as we're considering the other issues, because that fact, is not the amortization analysis and all those other things would need to move forward, but the decision on whether or not to move forward on an ordinance needn't necessarily be dependent upon that outcome. What the amortization period would be and so on, maybe, but the prohibition itself, in my view, does not need to wait for the amortization report. So I would make that motion or suggestion as a friendly amendment, or to at least get the process started of drafting that ordinance.
Councilmember Kokorian, Dave Michelson here. Sorry to jump in, but if I could ask you maybe to consider adding the planning department to work in conjunction with our office, because it's a zoning related ordinance. They normally would be very hands-on early on, but we'd be happy to take that on with the planning department, and there may be some CEQA issues that need to start to be reviewed as well.
Mr. Michelson, in light of the threat of litigation that Mr. Kokorian brought up earlier, can we move forward with this motion?
Yes, I believe you can move forward with the motion if at a future committee meeting or at full council, there's a desire by the council to talk with the lawyers. Our office confidentially in a closed session, that certainly will be available now that there is expressed threat of litigation. But I see no legal reason that would preclude you from this committee from moving forward today with your motion and with Councilmember Krikorian.
Mr. Krikorian, can we go ahead and add this as part of the list of recommendations I just read? Can we add it to 1C?
Sure, however you'd like to add it in.
So,
I just wanted to, in my view, I think it's just important that the committee provide that instruction to the city attorney to draft that ordinance, and then when it comes back, we can consider it certainly even in closed session to discuss the potential litigation threat as it relates to that ordinance as well.
I would agree with you. So if we can go ahead and add that instruction as part of the list of recommendations that we just read, we'll make that 1C.
Thank you.
Mr. Koretz?
Yes, to add on to that, I would just ask that we look at whether we can write it in such a way that it begins the clock ticking on amortization. So as we're doing the study, we can already have given direction that we would like to eliminate the non-conforming uses. So if it takes us an extra 6 months or a year to get the report back on the amortization, there is a way to already have the clock running towards that period. So if we could ask that be looked at as that part of the motion moves forward.
Okay, Mr. Koretz. I'm sorry, Mr. Krikorian.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask the city attorney to weigh in because I don't want any confidentiality stuff issues. But as I understand it, as a layperson, Mr. Koretz, once the ordinance is enacted, that clock does start ticking no matter what we do, because it is then a non-conforming use. So any continuing operation is a non-conforming use as soon as we enact that ordinance. How long we allow that non-conforming use to go on is what we're talking about after that. So, when it becomes a potential taking or not, how long we allow it to continue or not, that can all be done afterwards. But the clock would start ticking the moment that we declare it to be a non-conforming use. And I don't want the city attorney to chime in and validate that because I'm just a layperson expressing my views about this.
Right. Well, I'm sure we'll discuss that issue, that fine point at some point in the future.
Okay, so we can move forward. There was a second by with 2 seconds by Mr. Koretz and Mr. Krikorian to move forward with the list of recommendations. Okay, see no objection to that. That would be the order. Members, there aren't any other items on our agenda this afternoon, so our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.